Hi everyone, Nikki Bowman here and welcome to this week's review. Now, as you know, I love to read, as you can see behind me. And so because I love to read, I particularly love to read obviously about leadership and management related topics. But I figure that it's kind of my job to read and to research. And so many of us don't have the time that we need to do all of the reading that we want or to test out all of the various tomes out there, be they new or classic or whatever. So I decided that as part of my weekly newsletter, I'm going to do around about a 3-minute video where I'm going to give you 3 takeaways from whichever book I happen to either read that week or something that I want to revisit that I've read before that I think is of value. And I'm going to give it a rating out of 3, just to help you assess, is this something that you think is going to be really of interest to you, or is this something that you're just going to give a great big miss to? So essentially I'm doing the pre-work for you. So that's why it's called a 3-view. It's 3 minutes, 3 takeaways, mark out of 3. And so because this week's theme is courage, I'm going to kick off with a book by Brene Brown. And this one is Braving the Wilderness. Now, this is one of her more recent books. This is not the one that she's best known for, which is probably Daring Greatly. But this one struck a real chord in me. The real theme of the book and the first big takeaway is that there are points in your life, and especially when you're a leader and you truly want to lead, where you're going to be out there on your own in the wilderness, literally. You're going to feel like you're the only person in the world that thinks that way or feels that way or is going to act that way. Now, my view on this is so critical for leaders to understand, because this is how culture shifts. Culture doesn't shift unless someone stands up and says, you know what? I know everyone else around me is doing X, but I don't think X is right. And so for a while, those people are in the wilderness. We often call them whistleblowers. They often end up being fired or exited in some other way from the organization. But that's the first step. The first point and the first takeaway is, as a leader, you need to be prepared to be there in the wilderness on your own sometimes. The second takeaway from this book is a really key point for me, which is that the more that we distance ourselves from people, the easier it is to hate. Now, that applies to life generally. When we lump people into a category, like, for example, immigrants or illegal immigrants or refugees, it's really easy to demonize them. And we do the same in corporate life. We come up with, lumpy names for people like surplus resources, meaning people we're going to sack. When you get close to people and you really understand them, it's much harder to be inhumane with them. So maybe you still have to get rid of people. Maybe your company needs to get rid of people to survive. But you're going to treat those people as individuals with dignity, and people are going to see you do that. Because, for example, that person's not an immigrant or a Republican or a Democrat. They're someone's mum, someone's aunt, someone's friend, someone's sister or brother. When you start to think in those terms, the way that we interact with people and the way that we lead them changes for the better. And the third takeaway that I loved because of its directness is speak truth to bullshit. Pardon my French. It's Brene's French. Brene is a French name. That is actually what she says. And be civil. So in other words, when you see stuff going on that is just rank, speak out. Be the leader that has the courage to say, you know what, I hear your argument, it's just rubbish, and here's why. Don't stoop to their level, the Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high, but speak truth to it. So those are the 3 takeaways. I really loved this book. I'm giving it 3 out of 3. And in part because this first part of the book is Brene getting really quite personal about her own life and about how this relates to her. And I found that part of the book really moving, and it really swept me up then for the rest of the book. So that's it. If you're really into this whole concept of courage and courage through vulnerability, highly recommend Brene Brown, Braving the Wilderness. Okay, thanks, and see you next week.